Howdy friends, and welcome back to my channel. This is one of my original brews, Quest for the Holy Relic. I've played it extensively on this channel and talked about it a bunch before. Here's just a quick recap of the strategy. We have Quest for the Holy Relic is our key card. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you put a quest counter on it. You can remove 5 quest counters from it and sacrifice to search your library for any equipment, put it onto the battlefield, and then attach it to a creature you control. So the idea is we want to cast a bunch of creatures as fast as possible. So we have Memnites and Ornithopters, which are both 0-drop creatures, which are fantastic for just like vomiting out our hand and getting counters on quest. We have Glinthawk as a 1-mana 2/2 flyer that when it ETBs, you sack it unless you return an artifact you control to your hand. So you can play a Memnite, play Glinthawk, that's 2 creatures cast for quest, and then bounce the Memnite, replay it for a 3rd trigger on quest for the Holy Relic. And yeah, we just got a bunch of cheap creatures. The idea is just play them as quick as possible. This is kind of the core of the deck, is the Glinthawks, the Memnites, Ornithopters, and everything. Plan is get quest 5 counters as soon as humanly possible. To basically, the plan has always been to cheat our Argentum Armor into play. This gives our creature +6/+6, making a very fast clock. And whenever it attacks, we have to destroy target permanent. So the kind of baseline for this is we just get to start blowing up our opponent's lands if they have nothing better for us to destroy. So since Mon Horizons 2's dropped, we've gotten some new toys. We've got Esper Sentinel as one of our new 1-drops, which is taking this spot used to be Thraben Inspector. So it's awesome. It's a 1-drop, which we love having our 1-drop creatures here. It's an artifact, so you know if we don't have Memnite or Ornithopter, we do like having extra artifacts so that our Glinthawk, can stick around. And it's also incidental card draw, which, if our opponent's paying for this, then they're kind of not fighting our early plan. So if our opponent's paying for this, it's good for us. If they're not paying for it, we're drawing cards, which is good for us. So all upside, I think. Argentum Armor was always the go-to for equipment to get. With Caldra complete, it's actually interesting because now we can just get a quest off as soon as possible, get Caldra out. Now the way Quest for the Holy Relic works with living weapons, if I say I have an Ornithopter out and I have a quest on 5 and I pop and I get Caldra, the quest will resolve and attach it to a creature I control, like the Ornithopter or whatever, if there is a legal target. But then the living weapon still resolves and it will still end up attached to the germ token no matter what. So that's something to keep in mind. But it is, as fast or possibly a faster clock than Argentum Armor because it has haste. It's great if we don't have creatures in play. It's very resilient to removal, so it's added a lot of resilience. It's also now made our Stoneforge Mystics even better because previously Stoneforge Mystic was maybe getting Batterskull or maybe getting the Sword of Fire and Ice, but now it's got something that feels very aggressive and all in like what this deck's doing in Caldra. We also got Solitude as another card, which is interesting because this is a card that I've previously had trouble with running removal spells in this, trying to work out if we should run Path or we shouldn't, because ramping our opponents always felt bad in this deck because we are trying to be so aggressive and so low to the ground. But with Solitude, it's free, which is nice. Our opponent gains life, which we don't really care about giving them life because we're just gonna, deal huge chunks to them anyway. And the fact it's a creature, so we can actually tap out to do our thing and still play this, and it counts as a creature cast for putting counters on quest for the Holy Relic. So most of the deck's still relatively the same. The one thing we've changed is we've added Squadron Hawks, which is a card I've run in the past, which is kind of nice. This is over the core Skyfisher kind of slots. So it just gives us more creatures to cast, so that if we find one Squadron Hawk, we get to find all 4 Squadron Hawks and make sure we get our quest off. The other important thing is it puts cards in our hand to pitch to Solitude, which is just fantastic. So, new cards in the sideboard. We're trying out Blacksmith Skill. There are other cards that do similar things to Blacksmith Skill. Just testing it out. I think it's potentially interesting in that it could protect our creature or protect the equipment. So, figured that was worth testing out. I think that's the only new card in the sideboard. We've got the extra Solitudes in the sideboard. The plan is, I was originally going to run all 4 in the main, but I figured not every deck's going to have creatures we want to kill, so I'm being safe and running the other 2 in the board, so we get to bring them in if we do need them. If we don't, if our opponent's not a creature deck, then assumedly they'll have non-creatures, which makes Thalia better, so we've got Thalia's in the board for that. We've got Selfless Saviors, so in matchups where we really want to lead Giver of Runes into Stoneforge Mystic kind of plan, having extra 1-drops to protect a turn 2 Stoneforge is nice, so that's what they're in there for. 2 Brandon Forge Tenders for the Ragavan Darcy matchups, also just extra ways to protect our things from red decks. 4 Portable Hull, this is the removal I'm testing. Like, we get to run Solitude, which is fantastic, but Portable Hull will kind of deal with any kind of hate pieces our opponent might have for us, while being an artifact, so it can interact with Giver of Runes. We can kind of take something out early, and then if our opponent plays a hate piece, use Giver of Runes to reset the Portable Hull. And our last card is a Colossus Hammer. This is for if we're trying to be our fast combo-y style deck, and we really need to outspeed our opponent. This will often come in over the Sword of Fire and Ice, just to make sure we've always got equipment to find that'll beat our opponents up. So yeah, we're going to play through a league. We've played through the deck before. I've introduced the deck before, so we're going to do an actual league with this deck. We're going to test the new cards, see if Quest is competitive. We're up to 19 lands. I'm not sure if that's a thing or not. We've got 5 Canopy lands, 4 fetches. I feel like we get to play more mid-range now because the Stoneforge. I don't know. It might be too many. It might even be too few at this point. I'm not 100% sure. One of the bigger concerns is that Prismatic Ending is very, very good against us. It gets to clean up our germ that we make for Keldra. It gets to clean up anything that we'll be wearing in our Gentum armor. And it gets to clean up Quest if we don't get to get Quest off quick enough to pop. So it might be worth running a pro-white sword to protect from Prismatic Ending. Not quite sure. I think in the main deck it's kind of hard to want any of the pro-white swords over Sword of Fire and Ice just because of its utility. But with that said, let's get into a league and see how good Solitude and Caldra Complete are in Quest for the Holy Relic. Okay, here we are in game 1 of match 1 with our new build on Quest for the Holy Relic. We won the die roll, so we get to play first here. We're looking at an opening hand here, which looks really good. We've got a couple of lands, we've got a Quest, a couple of 0-drops, Giver, a Stoneforge. So pretty happy to keep that. Just leave Plains and Quest. Play out our Ornithopter. Get a counter Quest here and play out the Memnite as well. Hope to get lucky in. If we can pull take Glinthawk off the top, we can get Quest off next turn, which would be fantastic. Opponent leads Noble Hierarch. We find an Ornithopter. So kind of close. We get to play at the Stoneforge. We will get Caldra here. So worst case, we can just use Stoneforge to put Caldra into play. Get an Ornithopter out. Get in for one with the Memnite. And next time we'll get to play the Giver of Runes and activate Quest. Or potentially just activate Stoneforge to put the Caldra into play. So our opponent plays out a Coiling Oracle here. So we get another Noble. Play that out. Not quite sure what they're up to. Here we decide to play the Squadron Hawk to be mana efficient because we've decided that we're going for Quest here. And what I decided here was, because destroying a land is kind of the same as destroying Noble Hierarchs here, so for the foreseeable future, we're just going to kill Noble. So I do get the Sword of Fire and Ice, because if they happen to deal with this Ornithopter, which they're a mid-range deck, so they might, we'll just get to re-equip it and move it around. We do draw a land off that and get to play out the Giver, which is another advantage of getting the Sword, is we get to draw cards. We got an Argentum Armor and Burn Up Land, like I said, it's just no different to killing Noble Hierarchs. They do have a Prismatic Ending, which takes out... What did they take out there? Took out the Giver of Runes. Makes sense. They have a Solitude here for our Caldra. Still not in bad shape here. Get to keep getting in with this Ornithopter wearing the sword. And the Squadron Hawks got flying, which will be tough for them. Find another Quest, play that out, pass to our opponent. Something interesting we can do here is we can actually play the Glinthawk, use it to bounce the Caldra, and then reactivate the Stoneforge to get the germ back into play. But our opponents decided they've had enough there, and they've decided the Sword of Fire and Ice is good enough, so they do call it there, and we do win game number 1. Let's move on to sideboarding. Okay, so for game number 2, I decided they were a fair deck. So what I wanted to try first was just using Portable Hulls, because I was worried they might have things like Collect Roof and stuff that might trip us up. So, which Solitude would still do, but I decided I didn't think giving them the life and stuff of Solitude was really where we wanted to be. So I tried cutting the Solitude and the Squadron Hawks here to bring the Portable Hulls and the Blacksmith skills. I figured the Blacksmith skills would protect our combo nicely, because none of the other stuff really seemed to, because they would have Pathway Exiles and things. So I figured we'll see if Blacksmith skills good enough, see if Portable Hull taking out some of their creatures might be good enough, and that's where we went into game number 2. So for game number 2, our opponent gets to be on the play. We see an opening hand that's very mediocre. I mean, seeing what our opponent was doing, it is potentially capable because we do have givers to protect stuff. We've got the Esper Sentinel to draw cards. We've got Glinthawk as a nice early beta and Gingerbread as well. But we do... Oh, I do keep the 7, okay. I was going to say, it is potentially free to keep to try and find a quest hand, but I think it does make a lot of sense with our opponent being so mid-rangey that we're not really trying to combo. But I would normally mulligan to try and find a quest or a Stoneforge. We do get lucky there and just rip the quest off the top because we're good at magic. Our opponent has an Ice Fang Codal, which is a little scary, but... and we also have no 0-drops here, so we're really relying on drawing lands to be able to get us out of this. It is nice that we get to deploy both of our Giver of Runes here. Another nice thing about Blacksmith skill is it can protect our quest for the Holy Relic, which is pretty cool. Our opponent has the Solitude and the Ephemerate here to clean up both of our Giver of Runes. Not great for us. And they have the Prismatic Ending for our quest for the Holy Relic. So we're very, very far behind now. We do find a 0-drop, which would be nice if quest had stuck around. We would have had quest active there. That's fine. We play the Stoneforge, get the Caldra, play the Memnite, and our opponent gets to Ephemerate their Solitude and take out our Stoneforge, play a Night of Autumn, take out the Memnite, get in with their Ice Fang Codal. Not looking great for us here. We do find the Blacksmith skill to potentially protect our stuff. Here is where I make a bit of a boo-boo. So our opponent ephemerates their Solitude to take out our Esper Sentinel, and I cast Blacksmith skill in response. Now, I was I misunderstood. When I tried to cast this, I saw that their Solitude was a legal target, and I know if you know the card Vines of Vastwood, it doesn't quite say hexproof. It says that your opponents can't target the card that you use Vines of Vastwood on. So I know that interaction exists, and like I've done it before against Infect, where they'll try and buff up their creatures, use Vines of Vastwood their creature, and all of a sudden they can't target it, so all of their effects fall off it. Blacksmith skill has hexproof, which means that the creature that gets hexproof, only its controller can target it. So me giving the Solitude hexproof doesn't stop their Ephemerate from targeting. That was a pretty big mistake on my part. On the plus side, this game was essentially lost already, I think. I don't think we're coming back from all of this, especially if they have an Ephemerate, they get to, flicker their Night of Autumn, blow up stuff. Which is interesting, they didn't flicker the Night of Autumn, kill the Esper Sentinel, but that is what it is. But yeah, I misplayed. So they still get to Ephemerate. They exile my Esper Sentinel, get in, and now their Ephemerate is still coming back next turn. If I had used Blacksmith skill on my Esper Sentinel, it would have had hexproof, so it wouldn't have died to the Solitude, and their Ephemerate would have fizzled, which was the result I wanted, so I don't know why I chose to target the Solitude. I guess at the end of the day, it was a learning experience, and it's one of my favorite things about Magic is mistakes like that you make once, and then you learn how the frickin' cards work, and you play better next time. So we concede there because we're just not beating this. We've got a bunch of nerdy nothing, so let's go on to game number 3. Alright, so going back into game number 3, I did decide to try the Solitudes again over the Portable Holes. They didn't really show us anything except for creatures we need to do, so I figured that Solitude will still answer things a Portable Hole would need to answer. Which means that obviously the Squadron Hawks look a little nicer. And it also means that our fair mid-range plan is a little better, I think. Seeing what they were doing with being able to interact with Solitudes and stuff. I'm not 100% sure. This is mostly testing to kind of see what we're going to do in given matchups. Esper Sentinel didn't look great there, so we are going to trim them to make room for the Squadron Hawks coming back in. Esper Sentinel's a fantastic card. Our opponents didn't seem to have a lot of non-creature spells except for Ephemerate, which I think they're kind of either happy to pay for or not. They're getting heaps of advantage off their Ephemerates anyway, so if we get a little advantage in return, it's fine, and it'll only cost them 2 mana, so I think we'll try it like that and go into game number 3 against Bant Ephemerate. So we get to be on the play here for game 3 in match number 1 up against Bant Ephemerate. Not much to say about this. Just very, very solid hand. We could use a second land. This Sword of Fire and Ice looks a bit stranded for now. The Squadron Hawk might also be stranded, but if we find a second land, we'll pull these Squadron Hawks out. Potentially be fun. And also, like, we just get to turn 1, get 3 counters on quests. So this is very close to the dream hand, like the kind of hand we really want to see. If we could pull a Glinthawk for turn 2, we'll be laughing. Now, what I choose to do here, I choose to only put the 2 Ornithopters in play and leave the Memnite. This is so just to protect Insight against sweeps. I don't know. It's something I've always done with the deck. It was probably correct to play the Memnite and leave an Ornithopter in hand so that the Memnite could actually start getting it for damage. Our opponent does show us the Collect Roof. We have a solid. We draw a Solitude, so we pitch a Squadron Hawk to it because we managed to draw a second Squadron Hawk rather than a second land. Get in for 1. So the Oof's dealt with. Now we just need either a land or any of our 1-drop or 0-drop creatures to get quests online. Our opponent has Wrath of God, which we're kind of fine with if we can find anything to trigger this quest. We find Glinthawk, so we throw Glinthawk into the wind. He will sacrifice himself because he doesn't have an artifact to bounce. But we will pop quest and get Keldra complete and start beating in. This isn't what I would have hoped to do against a deck that I know has Prismatic Ending, but considering they wrathed and the state of things, I think this is fine. Just hoping they don't have anything here, which they do have a Solitude, which is unfortunate. It's going to be very hard for us to come back here. We have Gingerbrute. Now, I make a mistake here in playing the Gingerbrute and immediately attacking with it, and they just block with Solitude and get to gain some life for free. I forgot that you have to pay for Gingerbrute's ability to only be blocked by creatures with haste, which is just a silly mistake. I played with this card plenty in this deck because this is one of the best things to put equipment on, because not only does it have the haste, so you can like play it as your last thing to get a quest online, attack with it, but for 1 mana, it's basically unblockable. Like, any creature in Modern that has haste isn't generally going to be left untapped to be able to block this thing. It's just such a surprise. So this thing is like, in addition to all the flying evasive creatures we have to get in with equipment, this is just a fantastic addition. Also being an artifact, like I explained with Esper Sentinel in the intro, just being an artifact creature so the Glinthawk doesn't always fizzle and sack itself like it did earlier this game is really, really nice. But yeah, I just, for some reason, played it. I'm like, yeah, they can't block it. They don't have haste. And I attacked, and then as soon as they blocked, I realized I'm an idiot. And we drew a 3rd Squadron Hawk rather than a 2nd land yet again, which is just funny. Like, we've got excess Squadron Hawks, so like we draw 1 and we get to pull all the other ones out. And we just drew 3 of them rather than drawing any of our, 18 lands that are left in the deck. So we scoop it up there to ban Ephemerate. Probably not the worst matchup, but it is. This showed me another thing that is a problem with the deck, is that Solitude is pretty prominent, and even with like Keldra complete, Solitude is another problem. Prismatic Ending and Solitude are both big problems for this deck that, I thought of Prismatic Ending being a problem, but I didn't actually realize how big of a problem Solitude would be, and especially decks that get to run both are going to be pretty painful. So not a great start, but we'll dust it off and go on to match number 2. So here's match number 2 of our quest for the Holy Relic League. We won the dice roll and get to play first. Again, like compared to, we don't have a lot of 0-drops, don't have any 1-drops, but this is what we're looking for. It's a quest for the Holy Relic and creatures. We've already drawn 3 of our lands. We've got a Canopy for a redraw. Like, we should draw pretty good out of this. Just seeing quest in the opener is just so good in this deck. So we lead quest into Memnite, hoping to draw some, like a Glinthawk maybe to combo with this Memnite. I think our plan next is probably just play Stoneforge, find Keldra, or just play the Squadron Hawk, find more Squadron Hawks. So our opponent leads Steam Vents into Serum Visions, which is interesting. We decided to play the Stoneforge to get the Keldra, because this looks like a control style deck, so we might just need to get Keldra down. That might be the way to go. And our opponent plays at a Boral Chief of Compliance, so this tells me they're Blue-Red Storm, so this should be an interesting one. We choose to get quests online here by playing the Squadron Hawk, getting a lot of Squadron Hawks out, because we're hoping Argentum Armor, because Keldra would be a nice clock, but this is a nice clock, and it gets to take down the Boral, which is essentially destroying a bunch of mana. And our opponent decides that they can't beat that, so they want to bring in some sideboard tech against us, and they scoop it up there. So let's move on and see how we sideboard against Blue-Red Storm. Alrighty, so for our sideboarding against Blue-Red Storm, Blacksmith skill looks good. I think I like the Hexproof, or if they have any bounce effects. Burden Forge Tender looks nice. Potentially just a good thing to equip that'll be unblockable from their goblins that are blue-red. Also just nice to be able to protect something from burn spells, protect from Anger of the Gods and stuff potentially. Portable Hole doesn't look too good. It's good at dealing with their creatures, but I think we've got enough. Like, I don't think we care too much about their creatures. Not enough to bring Portable Hole, which slows down our own game plan. Subtle Saver, I don't think we need. We've already got these 4 effects. I don't think we need to overcommit on that. As said, Thalia is good for non-creature decks, which means Solitudes probably want to come out. Yeah, if we're taking out the Solitudes, then we probably don't need the Squadron Hawks. And then the last thing, because we're trying to kill our opponent very quickly, a Colossus Hammer is just going to kill them quicker than a Sword of Fire and Ice, so we'll swap it up like that, and go into game number 2 against Blue-Red Storm. Here we are for game number 2 against Blue-Red Storm. Our opponent gets to go on the play. We see a hand that's definitely not a combo hand, not even really a fair mid-range hand, and it has Argentum Armor, which we never want to see in an opener, so that's pretty easy mulligan. And we find a 6 that's got a quest, got a bunch of 0 and 1 drops, so it's a pretty easy keep. Bottom the second Esper Sentinel. There's a tough choice there between the second Esper Sentinel and the land, but I think keeping 2 lands just gives us the most upside of getting this quest off as soon as possible, which we drew another Glynhawk, so we can have it as early as next turn, but the problem is we won't be able to have Creature without Summoning Sickness to get in, so we could potentially play both Glynhawks next turn, get a Kaldra and do that, but I'm not sure if that's going to be our best line of victory here. Chooses to play out the Esper Sentinel, hoping to potentially draw some cards from our opponent. Which means we'll get the quest off next turn. Apparently it's Desperate Ritual, which is a scary start. They let us draw off Esper Sentinel, which draws us another Esper Sentinel. They lead into Manamorphose. Piece of the Puzzle, which is an interesting card for them to have here, because I would have thought that's a mid-range card, not a card you want against such a fast deck. They have Echoing Truth to bounce the quest. We play out the quest, try to play out an Esper Sentinel. Our opponent taps some mana and untaps it here, then lets our Esper Sentinel resolve. I don't know why I didn't attack with Glynhawk there. I think I just accidentally skipped through my combat there. We pass it back to our opponent. They have a Goblin Electromancer, so very scary now. They have a lot of mana reduction in play here. We draw another land, which actually isn't the worst here. So we play out the land, play out the Forge Tender just as insurance against any interaction our opponent might have. Play the Glynhawk. They have Peer Through Depths. They let us draw. We draw a quest. We draw another Plains off our other Esper Sentinel. They find Manamorphose. They remand our Glynhawk, which is fine. It still triggers quest because quest only cares about casting creatures. So we replay the Glynhawk, bounce Memnite, replay Memnite for the 5th counter on quest, grab our Argentum Armor, get in with Esper Sentinel and Glynhawk, destroy their Electromancer. The important thing is we destroy the Electromancer because Baral is legendary. So if we destroy Baral and they have a second Baral, we get punished. Whereas if they have a second Brawl now, it's stuck in hand. And that's good enough. Our opponent isn't able to stop our onslaught. They didn't manage to find Storm, which is very rare to find, is that they can't go off with like 2 of their Medallion Bears in play. And like they had Manamorphoses and stuff and pieces of the puzzle. And I don't know, they drew a bunch of cards and just didn't get there. So not going to complain about that. So we win 2-0 against Blue-Red Storm. On to the next match. So we're on to match number 3. Our opponent won the die roll, so they get to be on the play. Let's see what we're looking at here. A 4-lander is almost always an immediate mulligan, so we just barely have use for a 3rd land, let alone a 4th. This hand doesn't do anything, especially in the blind here where we don't know what our opponent's on. Like, potentially Giver of Runes and Squadron Hawk is going to be like this mid-range thing that can do something and we can hopefully draw good. But being in the blind, we kind of want a more combo-y hand. This hand's also kind of rough. Like, Solitude's okay, but whenever hard casting it, and we don't really want to be using it as removal unless we're already doing something good here. But we do just keep and hope that we're going to draw good, because going to 4 is pretty tough here. So we do just keep Arid Mace from Plains, the idea being that Arid Mace will hopefully keep more lands out of our deck, even though we just bottom some lands, so maybe it's incorrect to hope that this will have less lands in the deck. And our opponent's on Tron, so that's a bad start for us. Esper a good draw. We get to lead on that, and if our opponent wants to do stuff, we might get to draw off it. Turns out they're on Eldrazi Tron, which is a little scary. We get to give our runes into play, and the Ginger Brew, we get to get in for 2 here. The nice thing is our opponent doesn't have Tron locked up. But they do have a Dismember for our Esper Sentinel, and they can pay for it. But, I mean, our Esper Sentinel dealing feels kind of nice. They have a Reality Smasher here, which is kind of scary. We do have the Solitude here, which is nice. Let them get in for 5. Not going to do much about that. We unfortunately drew a colorless thing, so we can't Solitude them yet. They get Karn out. They get Walking Ballista. We vomit out a bunch of Memnites, and we scoop it up. We just can't beat this thing, especially when they've got this Reality Smasher. They don't even need to attack anymore. They can just sit back and protect this Karn and just, their Walking Ballista is going to murder kill us pretty aggressively. So I think here they found the second Tron piece so they can map for the third Tron piece. So let's go on to sideboarding. Alrighty, up against Eldrazi Tron. I like Blacksmith's skill here. Being able to protect our combo. Baron of Porch doesn't do anything. They don't have black or they're dismembers, but this one's pretty against black, don't mind me. Silver Save is potentially fine for some of the sweepers. Portable Hole doesn't do anything because they don't really have cheap things we want to deal with. Thalia could slow them down because they're Eldrazi Tron. Less about it. I'm actually more interested in going up on Solitudes here. And I think, as before, the Colossus Hammer of Sword of Fire and Ice because we just want to be aggressive here. I think we can cut Esper Sentinels. Against Green Tron, I might like leaving them in, but against Eldrazi Tron, I think they're kind of free to cut. And I think trimming a Giver here is kind of nice. I think I just want a little more careful, so I think I'm just going to trim a Stoneforge Mystic. This is probably wrong. Like, Stoneforge Mystic getting Caldera is probably one of the better lines we have here, but I can't really see anything else I want to cut. Maybe it's just one of the 0 drops, but I don't like kind of lowering my cap. Maybe it's just like I'm not meant to bring in the blacksmith skills or something. I don't know. We'll run it like this and see how it goes and see if we want to stick with that for game number 3 if we manage to get there. So let's go into game number 2. Alright, so we get to go on the play against Eldrazi Tron for game number 2 of match 3. Opening hand doesn't do anything. Again, like, we're not looking to be fair here. We're looking to get an aggressive quest or an aggressive Stoneforge, which means I probably just shouldn't have got that Stoneforge. But here we get to find a Giver into Stoneforge hand. So that's pretty nice. Pretty happy to keep that. And I think just bottom next... What am I bottoming there? Land? Is that right? Yeah, that's more like it. Yeah. So here we keep 2 lands, Giver into... Yeah, that's right. I thought I was having my first time playing my land. Thankfully, Moto didn't punish me for clicking the land to go on the bottom there. We do go Giver into Stoneforge here. Our opponent had a Chalice on 0, which is kind of rude. Thankfully, we haven't drawn any 0 drops yet. And of course, there is a 0 drop for us, but we do get Caldera into play very quickly. And we get to start beating our opponent for 5. Nice thing here, our opponent hasn't played a Chalice on 1 yet, so we do have the option of, if they deal with this Germ, they warp well the Giver there so that they can get to the Germ potentially later on. Play an Expedition map. If they do deal with this Germ, we can use Glinhawk to bounce the Caldera and then Stoneforge to redeploy it to reset the Germ token. And we get to do that twice because we do have 2 Glinhawks here, which is really nice. I end up just deciding, because of how low our opponent is here, it is nice to just get one of the Glinhawks out to provide some aggression, because we do still have the other one as a backup to reset the Caldera if need be. Opponent plays a Thought-Knot Seer though. They take the Ornithopter that we couldn't cast anyway, so I think our opponent just kind of sees the writing on the wall here and is kind of done with it. And they scoop it up when it goes to our turn, so pretty nice. Let's see what happens in the decider. Alright, going into game number 3, we do decide to go back to the sideboard. It's interesting watching these back, because sometimes there are decisions that I make that I question, and it turns out that I was right to question it. Just, I don't know how at the time my brain isn't thinking the things that my brain is able to think in retrospect here. But obviously the Stoneforge is good, and the Giver's good, just protecting our Stoneforge, just ensuring we get that unlocked. So it is worth trimming a couple of Memnites here. This is what I end up going for game number 3. Game number 2 just proved how important Stoneforge was. Something I've always said about the quest list, and something that's very important now with the whole Caldera line. I think that we mulligan 7s pretty freely unless they have a playable quest hand, even if it's a 1 land, as long as it's got some like spells and whatever. Or we keep hands that have the Giver into Stoneforge line. Especially with Caldera, that line is so powerful and so in this X game plan. So trimming them in this matchup where we need to be fast just doesn't make any sense. So let's go with this and go into game number 3 against Eldrazi Tron. So our opponent gets to be on the draw here. Our opening hand is a close to playable quest hand. I mean, we don't have any zeros, we don't have a second land, but we do have a quest. So we will keep this. Maybe not the smartest, but we will keep. And we draw an Ornithopter, which is just kind of the best. Like, it was either a zero drop or a land being our best draw there. The best draw next turn would be a second land. Our opponent has the Chalice, which they play on 1, which is real punishing for us. I just slam a Gingerbread into it just to get a counter on quest, because even though the Chalice counters it, it still does count as casting. Throw a Glenhawk into it to get countered. Cast a Memnite here, and we Solitude our own Memnite to get the 5th counter on quest, which is a really nice line. We get the Argentum Armor, we hit our opponent, we destroy one of their lands, and they scoop it up there. So another Feather and Solitude's cap here is like, we had one land, and our opponent had a Chalice on 1. We had no right to get quest off there. You know, we threw the Gingerbread into the Chalice just to get a counter. The Glenhawk should have ensured us getting a quest off. Instead, it was just 1 trigger on quest where it's normally 2. We found the other 0 drop in the Memnite, you know, and then we were able to. What turn was that? That was turn 3. I believe that was our turn 3. We solituded away our Memnite, so that our Ornithopter that had been sitting there could wear this Argentum Armor and destroy our opponent's land. We popped their tower to make sure that they couldn't access Tron. And even Eldrazi Tron isn't going to get to do much. Like, they can play a land and play a Thought-Knot, but they're still losing to this card wearing the Argentum Armor here. So Solitude letting us get quests off a whole turn earlier than we should have, even through, like, honestly, a very good piece of hate there. Honestly, I'm not sure. Maybe our opponent should have played this on zeros, because they have 1-drops, and, like, my best 1-drops are recasting my 0-drops, but I mean, I had a blacksmith skill, so if they hadn't have played this Chalice on 1, this might have come in handy as well. So, yeah, very impressive showing there. Solitude definitely pulling its weight there. Let's go on to match number 4. All right, here we are for match number 4. We are on the draw here. See an opening hand. It has the Giver, but it doesn't have a Stoneforge, so pretty freely ship that back. And we see a Giver into Stoneforge, so this is kind of perfect. I think ideally we bottom one of the lands here. Yep, just throw away a Canopy land there. And so the plan here is to turn 1 Giver into turn 2 Stoneforge. And our opponent leads on Urza's Mine, so looks like we're versing a Tron deck again, which, if they're regular Tron, this could be bad for us. They do play a Chalice on 1, kind of annoying. But we do get to get the Stoneforge down, and we will get to find Caldra, and next turn play out the Caldra. We do have Giver to protect our Stoneforge, so the only thing they could have here is, you know, obviously assembling Tron into some nonsense. They play an Eldrazi Temple, so it is Eldrazi Tron again. Unfortunately here, they have a Thought-Knot Seer, which will get to take out Caldra, which kind of ruins all of our plans. We do have a backup Stoneforge, but the best it can get now is a Sword of Fire and Ice. We will go for it here, because this can still potentially win us the game. We are going to need another land, though, or to spend 2 turns getting the Sword of Fire and Ice into play and equipped. And until then, this Thought-Knot is just stonewalling us here. I'll play out the Ornithopter here. And we'll just hold up Stoneforge activation to drop this Sword of Fire and Ice into play. And our opponent plays Khan Great Creator, so we can no longer equip the Sword of Fire and Ice once we can get it into play. So, and they get Sky Sovereign Console Flagship off their Khan Great Creator, like things weren't bad enough for us already. And we decide to scoop it up there because there's, yeah, just nothing we can do from this position. Let's go on to sideboarding against Eldrazi Tron yet again. Okay, so sideboarding against Eldrazi Tron. We like the Colossus Hammer, we like the Solitudes, we like the Blacksmith skills, and we like the Selfless Saviors is what we decided. And to come out, the Sword of Fire and Ice is coming out for the Colossus Hammer. The Esper Sentinels are coming out because they probably won't draw us too many cards. And we will also trim 2 Memnites. And we will go into game 2 with this configuration. So we get to be on the play for game 2 against this Eldrazi Tron opponent. Opening hand has a quest, but unfortunately has our 2 quest targets that we really give a shit about and only 1 creature, so we can ship that. This hand, kind of doing nothing. It's a 4-lander, 3 1-drops that kind of aren't super impressive. And this is capable. We're on 5, unfortunately, but we do have a really, really solid looking quest hand here. So I would imagine we bottom Squadron Hawk and maybe probably just Selfless Savior. It's either Selfless Savior or Giver of Runes, I think. Yeah, just bottoming another land. We have a bunch of 1-drops, that's pretty fair. Let's lead quest into Ornithopter, get a counter on it, and hopefully start bombing out these 1-drops and get this quest online. Opponent leads Tower, doesn't have a map, which is good for us, I suppose. We draw another quest, which is unfortunate. We don't really have the time here to be trying to get a second quest online as well, so we'll just deploy the Giver of Runes here. I think getting the protection down is pretty important. We draw a land, so might as well get the quest down. We're not doing anything else. We get the Savior out, get a quest up to 3, add 1. And pass back to our opponent. The Giver of Runes is far too valuable for if we get these quests off. Our opponent has Tron, and they have All Is Dust. So, yeah, we lose all our board. We lose both of our quests, and we scoop it up there. We're not coming back from this. Our opponent's like, if they had have just had something like kill a lot of creatures, fine. Like, but no, they destroyed both of our quests, and they have Tron now, so they can just play literally anything, and we can't catch back up without having our quest. So, scoop it up there. 1-1 against Eldrazi Tron so far. I think it's potentially a better matchup than this match made it seem. I think match 1, the previous match we played against Eldrazi Tron, is more of an indication of how it is, but I do think it is. Tron is a deck that I think is favored against us basically always, so being able to beat it once is fine. So that was match number 4. We are currently 2-2, I believe, so let's go into match 5 and see if we can get the 3-2. Here we go. Match number 5 to see if we can get a positive record with our new build of Quest for the Holy Relic. We did lose the die roll, which is unfortunate. This opening hand is a hot mess. We've got the Solitude, we've got 3 of our quests, we've got both of our best quest targets and no lands, so I think that one's a mulligan, probably. Let me see this, which is a 1-lander, which isn't really doing a lot with it. Like, we would definitely bottom the Caldera here, and a hand would just do nothing, so we'll ship that back as well. Here, at least we have a Stoneforge. We don't have a Giver to protect it, but I think this is probably good enough in the blind. So let's just go down to this 5. Apparently it's Blackleaf Cliffs. Thankfully they didn't have any hand aid for us, so that would have been unfortunate. But we will just lead with an Esper Sentinel, hoping to draw some cards off it here against a black-red opponent. They have a second Blackleaf Cliffs and a Ransack the Lab. So we do get to draw a card. They put a Goya's Vengeance in their bin, so that's kind of scary. We draw a Argentum Armor, which is basically like not drawing at all. Except sometimes, you know, it would be nice to leave it in the deck. We Stoneforge, get a Caldera, hope that this might be enough against them. They have a Pented Prism that they play with 2 colors. They do pay for the Esper Sentinel. And they grief and take away our Caldera, which is unfortunate. This is another thing. Like I said with Solitude in the first match, grief and like other hand hate, being able to take away our Caldera after we get with Stoneforge is another real downside of the current build of the deck. We can't really do much to fight. Like, in the past, I have run a Singleton Leyline of Sanctity in the board because we're never casting them, but just hoping to, like, you know, hoping to rip it in our opening hand to be able to just stop any hand hate. I don't think it's... I don't know. I could see running it over the Hammer. You know, the Hammer's not really going to win us any games that we weren't winning anyway, I suppose. So, like, a one-off could be fine for, like, specifically the Grief matchup. But, you know, here we get to play Squadron Hawk, get 3 more Squadron Hawks. So, got a nice little board building up. And we've got 4 lands in Argentum Armor. We get 2 more lands, we can start equipping it. Our opponent casts Fury and just massacres our entire board, which is cool. Very cool. Another card that's really punishing for us. And they have a Through the Breach here for a Grizzlebrand. So that's also cool. They get to hit us with that. They draw a bunch of cards. Bunch of stuff. Grief away one of our Squadron Hawks, I suppose. They do leave themselves on 8, which is, I can potentially kill them from here. Like, this Stoneforge can put this Agenda Armor into play. If I draw one more land, I can start equipping it. We get to put some Squadron Hawks out as like jump blockers if we decide that's what we want to do. Get in with our Stoneforge and be hopeful that this is good enough. They do shock themselves, but then they play Ilhag, get the Fury, wipe our board. Ilhag will throw an Emrakul into play and murder kill our face. So let's go to sideboarding for game number 2 against, I don't know, Goyo's Through the Breach, Grizzlebrand nonsense. Alright, sideboarding here. They're clearly a reanimated deck of some description, so being able to Solitude them must be nice. We yet again decide that Colossus Hammer is an upgrade on Sword of Fire and Ice. Blacksmith skill, I think any interaction they have is probably likely to be red, so and I think like I can just chump block heat with these as well. So let's bring the Boneted Forge Tenders. I do like Esper Sentinel. It does look like it'll draw us some cards. Gingerbread looks like he's not really necessary for his evasion, so let's just trim the Gingerbroods and send this back to our opponent and see what happens. Here we go for game number 2 against our Grizzlebrand Reanimator opponent, as opposed to the new kind of reanimators that are like non-legendary reanimator. This is more old school. This hand is sadly really, really perfect if it had a single land over literally any one of these cards except for Quest for the Holy Relic. It would probably be a keep. I don't know, maybe if Memnite was a land, it would probably... No, I would keep if it was a land over the Memnite. It's unfortunate we have to ship it because we don't find a land. Here we see a dirtly bunch of nonsense. The Orthopter and the Memnite are already kind of dead cards in this hand without having a quest. So we go back to 5 and we find a quest. A couple of 0-drops, a Boneted Forge Tender. It's a nice looking hand. I think we probably just bottom a Solitude and a land here. Yep. And nice. Lead turn 1 quest, Ornithopter Memnite. See what our opponent's got for us. Opponent is a Sacred Foundry. Okay. Into an Insolent Neonate. They're certainly doing some stuff here. We'll play out a Boneted Forge Tender to get a 3rd counter on our quest. Get in with the Memnite, because I think we're kind of happy to trade it for the Neonate here if that's what they decide to do. They decide they don't want to do that. They grief us, take our Stoneforge Mystic, which, we weren't casting anyway, it's fine. They do get stuck on 1 land, which is interesting. We draw a Giver, so that's cool. That'll be our 4th counter on quest. Let's do that. Let's get in for 2 with our creatures that have power. Our opponent goes to 14. We pass to them. They tear our quest, which is real sad. We draw a Solitude, which is also kind of real sad. We just decide to right-click attack all here. Can't be bothered leaving the Ornithopter back. Get in again. Our opponent furies to try and take down our board. We get to sack the Boneted Forge Tender here, which is huge. I think Boneted Forge is a great sideboard card, considering Fury's in the meta here. We find a Plains, so we will get to cast a Stoneforge Mystic here, which is awesome. We'll find the Caldera, so this is a must deal with now. Choose this game with the Memnite. Because of what happened with the Fury, I think now that we don't have a Baron in play, we need this Giver to be able to protect our Stoneforge from a Fury. We use Stoneforge to get Caldera into play here. Knowing what our opponent's after, I think we just threaten lethal here and get in with the Giver as well. No, we do leave the Giver back out. I suppose putting them on 1's kind of the same thing, right? And they scoop it up. They can't deal with it. Unfortunate for our opponent, they got stuck on 1 land, but it seems like they kept because they had a bunch of, like, really good cards against us, which makes total sense, but we're able to kind of beat them fairly. I think even with Caldera, we were like just beating with a bunch of knuckleheads for that game, so lucky for us. Let's go on to game number 3 of match number 5. Alright, scary stuff here. Our fast, combo-y, graveyard reanimator, your opponent gets to be on the play here, but I mean, this is the kind of hand we'd hope for. We've got a turn 1 quest, we've got a Glinthawk to support it, a Giver Runes to protect, we get the quest up, we've got a Squadron Hawk to play on 2, which will find more Squadron Hawks. I don't think it could get much better than this, so we will keep. Our opponent mulligans to 5. They lead with a tapped Eldrazi Tron, good for us. We'll lead quest into a Memnite. Might have been more correct to hold the Memnite here, just to protect from any removal our opponent might have, But everyone has hand hate as well, so it's kind of 50-50 here. Like, we just have to guess whether they have it or not. We'll play out the 2 protection spells here just to like keep our board safe. Next turn, all we need to do is play Glinthawk and we're off. We find the Orthop to cast that. Fantastic. We'll lead Squadron Hawk here, just get some cards in our hand, get some bad draws out of our deck. The Glinthawk will be nice because it will be able to potentially do some work later on. We'll just get our Gentleman Armor here, pop it on the Mem Knight to spread out our damage. Get him with the Forge Tender as well because we don't need it untapped. We'll blow up our opponent's White Source here. Glinthawk bouncing the Ornithopter just to get more power into play, and our opponent scoops it up. So we win match number 5 for a 3-2 record. Let's go into the post-league wrap-up. Alright, so that felt honestly better than I expected, especially after that match number 1 where we realized that Solitude was kind of a house against us. It's just the explosive power of this deck is still something to be feared if we get the right hand, which, maybe we could splash blue and add Fairy Plus again to up that, but I think like it's trying to find the right balance between having those explosive draws and having a realistic and reasonable plan for if our opponent's able to interrupt us, which I think Stoneforge adds nicely. I think Solitude is kind of like a lot better than I even expected. That game where I was able to get a quest off and like win that match against Eldrazi Tron just showed me like it doesn't even need to be good as removal. I mean, it would kind of feel rough being on a full 4 of them if they're not, if they don't have text against homework. Because whenever casting, they're always card disadvantage. But I suppose like our deck's kind of doing that anyway. I never really felt the need for Squadron Hawk to kind of, or it never happened with Squadron Hawk's card advantage made up for Solitude's card disadvantage. I think the one thing I would want to do is honestly go up to 4 Solitude and just like ditch the Squadron Hawks entirely. I think I like Thalia in the main. I'm not sure how correct this would be, but I think this gives us like between Esper and Thalia, like it's something that I've noticed with Death and Taxes lists that aren't on Arbiters anymore. They're on Esper Sentinels. I play Death and Taxes. You might see I've got a Death and Taxes video up on the channel. The Death and Taxes combo of like turn 1 Giver into turn 2 Stoneforge is so powerful. As like if you see Death and Taxes as like the death side being your white weenie aggro and the taxes side being these taxing effects that your creatures inherently have on them to slow your opponent down, that whole like I'm being fast and slowing you down side of it. This is the line of like the fastest possible way to kill you is Giver into Stoneforge, get Kaldra to cheat Kaldra into play. But the taxing line is Esper Sentinel, which chokes your opponent's mana if they're trying to play non-creature spells, into Thalia, which taxes it even further. So, like, at that point, in order for them to do anything, they're having to let you draw cards off Esper Sentinel. So, I think I do want to try that interaction. Obviously, only 3 Thalia because she's legendary. Everything else is kind of good. Like, Gingerbread is one that, like, he didn't do anything in these leagues, but Gingerbread's always kind of been a really solid card in this deck for me. Just, again, being able to equip it and him be as unblockable as like an Ornithopter or a Glinthawk is really nice. Especially like if you are leaning into Hammer, it is nice that you put Hammer on Gingerbread and he's pretty unblockable. Glinthawk's obviously really good. Giveroon's obviously really good. Quest's super important. The equipment package is pretty solid. I think the thing the league taught me is like even that game 1 where I got the sort of Fire and Ice instead of Argenta Mana would have still been really, really good. I just don't think we need sort of Fire and Ice anymore. I think we just got to play the kind of bullshit cheaty way that we want to play and like trying to cheat in these 2 gigantic equipment. And I think the same is true for the Colossus Hammer and the board. Like we just don't need it. Like these 2 equipments. I think Kaldra is just the best equipment in the deck by far now. Argenta Armor is like obviously when it's good it's insane, but it's not always good. And I think Kaldra is just always good. So I think this is the main deck 60. I would try next. I'll try it again. I'm not sure I'll try this again anytime soon. It is just so weak to interaction, and Modern is such an interactive format. It is the removal format, and it's so fast now that this deck's speed isn't even really an advantage anymore. It was nice some of the decks I fought against were durdling a little bit, which let me get away with it. As for the sideboard, so something I've always done the sideboard is like tried to be heavy on 1-drops rather and try to not have 2-drops at all, because as you can see, some of those games the deck just didn't find a second land, and which, like, maybe I could add more lands and get away with it, but, like, the deck doesn't need a second land usually. And if we do, I'd rather be doing this kind of stuff, but I think if we are leaning to this, like, we might draw more cards off Esper Sentinel, we might draw into more lands, like, Maybe I can get away with some 2-drops on the board, and I think just as meta considerations, I think 2-drops like Ranith Magistrate would be really nice if we can find it here. I think like a couple of those for like the Cascade and Living End matchups, and even just some other like unfair matchups. Having this like fair card to stop them is nice. And it's 2-drops on the top of our curve, but it's, you know, we get to like play our low curve, like assembling our combo, and then just like play this as the end of our curve. I think realistically, especially like seeing those kind of graveyardy decks and like and all that. I think Sanctifying Beck is a really good card, especially because our mana base is pure white, so we do get to cast it very reliably. And lastly, so we've still got like a one-off slot, which could be the Leyline of Sanctity, as I said, but I think like against like Grave Check stuff, like Sanctify is fine. I don't know, like could be the Leyline of Sanctity. I think what I want to try is the Batterskull, so that if we're not doing unfair things, we have a fair card to bring in. There were games where like I would have liked to have had access to a Batterskull somewhere. Could obviously be in the main deck, but I think it's just worse than either of these two in any given scenario. Like, that's not true. It's not. But like, I think rather than like Leyline to fight Grief, instead having Batterskull, so that if they Grief our Caldera, we can use another Stone Fortress to get a Batterskull. I think it's a much better plan. I think Batterskull's going to have a lot more utility. But yeah, we managed to go 3-2 with a deck that, you know, is my own personal pet deck that, you know, isn't meant to be anything impressive. It's, you know, not doing things that are like revolutionary that people just don't know about. Like it isn't good enough to really compete in the modern meta, but I think the additions of Caldera Complete and Solitude have given it a leg up that might mean it can, you know, be a real contender for like, you know, not topping any tournaments or anything, but like being viable to take to a tournament if it is your flavor and it is your style and you do enjoy this kind of deck. You can just take it to a casual tournament at your LGS and maybe get a positive result and maybe surprise some opponents with. So there's the deck, there's the results. Let me know what you thought in the comments, whether you'd like to see it again. Maybe, you know, like I said, I don't think I'll be looking to play it again anytime soon. Unless there is want for it. If you guys enjoy this content, let me know, and I will do more leagues with Quest for the Holy Relic. But with that said, that's the end of the video. So until next time, bye-zy.